Okay, so if you've ever built a complex web UI, you've definitely been there. You've fought that endless battle against stutter, jank, and those super annoying layout shifts. Well, today, we're diving into a tool that takes one of the biggest culprits head-on: text measurement. Let's get into Pretext, a library that promises incredibly fast, super accurate text layout, all without ever touching the browser's slow rendering engine.
So here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we're going to unmask the performance villain that's been causing all our UI headaches. Then, we'll introduce Pretext as the hero that comes to the rescue with a totally DOM-free solution. I'll walk you through its main API, show you how to handle things like whitespace, and we'll even peek at some of the advanced controls. And finally, we'll wrap up by looking at why this whole approach is, frankly, a massive game changer.
All right, let's get right to the heart of the matter. We need to talk about the fundamental reason why our beautifully designed interfaces can sometimes feel so sluggish and fragile.
It's a question every single front-end developer has screamed at their monitor at some point, right? You load some data, the text content changes, and suddenly the entire page just jitters. Or you're trying to build a perfectly smooth, virtualized list, and you just keep getting these frustrating content jumps. What is this invisible force causing all this chaos? Well, the villain has a name: DOM reflow. You see, anytime you need to measure an element's size in JavaScript, like its height or width, you risk triggering this thing. And what it does is force the browser to grind to a halt and recalculate the position of everything on the page. It's kind of like asking an architect to completely redraw the entire building's blueprint just because you wanted to move a single chair. It is one of the most expensive, performance-killing things we can do, and for a long, long time it's been the only way to measure dynamic text.
But what if we could figure out the size of our text without ever having to ask the DOM in the first place? This is where Pretext swoops in with a truly brilliant solution.
You see, instead of that old hack, you know the one, writing text to some hidden div and then measuring it, Pretext just sidesteps the problem entirely. It hooks directly into the browser's own font engine, the same one that's used for drawing text on a canvas. This gives it the absolute ground truth about every character's size and spacing, without ever needing to trigger a single expensive layout calculation.
And this really shows you the night and day difference in the approach. The old way was this painful, repetitive cycle: write to the DOM, measure it, and trigger a costly reflow every single time. But Pretext flips that on its head with a much smarter two-step process. You prepare your text and font info just once. After that, you can run layout calculations as many times as you want. It's just pure, lightning-fast arithmetic. No reflows, ever.
So that sounds great, right? But how do we actually use it? Well, you're going to be surprised at just how simple and clean the core API is. Let's take a look at how you'd put it to work.
Getting up and running is just incredibly straightforward. It's really just 3 steps. First, you install the package, of course. Second, you call the prepare function. This is that one-time analysis where Pretext works its magic. And third, you take that prepared object and pop it into the layout function to get your height and line count instantly, whenever you need it. And the actual code? It's so clean. You just import prepare and layout. You call prepare one time, passing in your string and the font declaration, just like you'd write it in CSS. Then you can feed that prepared object into layout whenever you want, along with the container width and a line height. And boom, that's it. You get the exact height you need instantly. Of course, we all know that not all text on the web behaves the same way. So what about things like code blocks or text areas, where every single space and every line break actually matters? You know, in standard HTML, a bunch of spaces just collapses into one, and hard line breaks are mostly ignored. But for things like user input in a text area or showing some pre-formatted text, we have to preserve that exact formatting. And yep, Pretext has a super simple and powerful way to handle this. The solution is literally just one simple configuration option. You just pass, quote, whitespace equals prewrap into the prepare function. That's it. You're telling Pretext to preserve every space, every tab, and every new line, exactly like a browser does for a pre-tag. This is absolutely perfect for getting accurate measurements for content inside text editors or code blocks. Now, getting the total height of a text block is a huge win, for sure. But Pretext doesn't stop there. It also gives you a lower-level API for those times when you need to take complete, granular control of the layout process yourself. And this is where things get really, really cool. Imagine you're not just measuring a block of text, but maybe you're building a totally custom layout engine in JavaScript, or you're rendering text directly to a canvas or an SVG. Pretext gives you the tools to do exactly that. To unlock all this power, you start with a function called prepare with segments. And from there,
you have a whole suite of functions you can use. You can get an array of all the final text lines, you can efficiently check line widths, or, and this is my favorite part, you can use an iterator-style API to lay out your text one single line at a time.
Just think about what Layout Next Line makes possible. You can calculate the width for the first line of text, draw it, and then maybe the available width for the next line changes because there's a floating image there. No problem. You just calculate the next line using the new width. This unlocks those beautiful magazine-style text layouts that have always been so difficult to pull off on the web.
Okay, so we've got this powerful, flexible API. But what's the actual tangible impact on the apps we build every single day? Let's connect all this back to performance and our lives as developers.
Take a look at this number, 0.09 milliseconds. Let that sink in for a second. That is how long it takes the layout function to run on a batch of 500 different texts. I mean, it's not just fast, it's practically free. The reason it's so unbelievably fast is because all the heavy lifting happens in that one-time prepare step. The layout function itself is just doing super simple math on values that are already cached. And what that means is you can run this thing in a request animation loop or on every single pixel of a browser resize event, and you never have to worry about dropping frames. It's just that fast.
So what does this actually unlock for us developers? Well, it means we can finally build proper list virtualization, where you know the exact height of every single item before it ever renders. That completely eliminates that horrible scrolling jank. It means you can prevent layout shift by pre-calculating the space you need for data before it even arrives. You could even build your own custom layout engines or run visual regression tests in a server environment, completely without a browser.
And you know, it's always important to recognize that amazing tools like this build on a foundation of brilliant ideas. The Pretext documentation actually credits Sebastian Markesbach's work from over a decade ago as planting the seed for this architecture. It's just a great reminder of how innovation in our field so often stands on the shoulders of giants.
And that really brings us to the end. What Pretext does is it effectively removes one of the oldest, most stubborn performance bottlenecks we've ever had on the web. So the final question I really want to leave you with is this. With the performance penalty of text measurement basically gone, what completely new, incredibly dynamic, and truly responsive user interfaces could you now imagine and build?